Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into wrestling at the college level. My guest today is John Hangey, and he's the head men's wrestling coach at Rider University. And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
I actually went to school at Rider University.
Wow.
But back then it was Rider College.
Uh-huh.
So I got a degree in undergrad from Rider College and a degree in graduate school from Rider University. So kind of went to two schools, but the same school. Went there. I was originally from Quakertown, Pennsylvania. Went to Rider. It was actually my second choice. I had verbaled to East Stroudsburg University because it was closer to home, and all my friends from high school were gonna go in there, so it was an easy decision. And funny story, Coach Taylor's in my house, who was the previous head coach, and my coach, my mentor, did a lot of things for me. In my house, my dad and I, in a small Cape Cod house in PA, up on the second floor, having an argument. I'm going to East Stroudsburg. No, you're not. You're going to Rider. Now, the Rider coach is downstairs. I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to East Stroudsburg. So long story short, I come downstairs, said, Coach Taylor, I'm coming to Rider. So Dad won the argument decision, and it was the best decision that he knew it was the best decision for me. And now that I look back, and it didn't take me long to figure it out, that it was the right decision for me moving forward as well. So yeah, I spent my career at college, undergrad, graduate school at Rider.
So now just take me back into high school. When did you start thinking about that you could actually wrestle at the college level? Was it freshman year, senior year? When did it all begin?
It was actually not until about midway through my senior year, because I had been in the sport for a long time. I started when I was 4 years old, and I had immediate success, and then I kind of leveled off, and then I kind of blended in, and I didn't make it out of the district tournament until I was a senior in high school.
Wow.
And if you say that nowadays, coaches will just laugh at you. But then I went on, and it clicked for me for some reason. So I went on and I won sections, districts, regions, states, and I just was running the table in Pennsylvania, and Coach Taylor recognized it. So not until midway through did I start to feel the success, and then I'm like, well, maybe I should start looking at colleges. And I looked at Division III, I looked at Division II, I looked at I, so that really kind of opened my eyes, the success in my senior year.
Yeah. So now you said that there was two schools. Did you apply at any other schools, or just those two schools were the only ones recruiting?
Yeah, I had Lock Haven on my list. Penn State looked at me, but I was like, that's too big, and I'm not good enough, so it was kind of checked off real fast. I looked down south at Clemson because they had wrestling when I was in school. And my mom used to make me look at other schools just as options, but it narrowed rather quickly down to Stroudsburg and Rider.
So now you're at Rider University. What's it like?
It was awesome. I mean, the times that I had as a freshman just being on my own for the first time, and I have a pretty strict Pennsylvania father, so it was like freedom, but I really was into wrestling at the same time, so it was a good school for me because it was a small campus environment, so I couldn't get lost. I was known by the professors, by other kids, by my teammates, so it was kind of like a second home to me. So it was an easy transition for me.
Great. And wrestling-wise, did you do well?
I did. I just kept picking up from where I left or started on my senior year, and I actually broke my ankle in my freshman year, and then made it to the conference finals after coming back from that injury, and then lost in the conference finals, and I was just destroyed.
Oh my God.
So I just kind of, used it as motivation, and then I won 3 conference titles moving forward from that point there.
Wow. So now you graduate from Rider University. How does one go from graduating from it to actually becoming the head wrestling coach for it?
Long story. I graduated undergrad in 1993. So I stayed on for another 3.5 years, very slowly going after my master's degree, because I was an All-American in my senior year. I was placed 4th in the country. And so I wanted to stay on and help my alma mater with Coach Taylor because I wanted to learn. Mm-hmm. And I figured out later in my college career that I wanted to be a coach. I started out as an education major. I wasn't really into the classroom type thing, so I wanted to drift and still help kids but be a coach. So I went in and got a master's degree and loved and just learned everything and loved the environment because I really liked the academic environment at Rider. I felt like I did really well there. Yeah. So I did that for 3.5 years, and then at the end of that, I went and was named the head coach at Bucknell University in 1997. So I did that for 3 years there, got very valuable experience. But my wife is a South Jersey girl and didn't like Central PA. So the second I said we're going back to New Jersey, she basically had the house all packed up in a moment's notice. We moved back, and then I was literally the head assistant under Gary, our former head coach, from 2000 till this is my first year as the head coach. So a lot of learning and growing and not caring when I got the position. It was just, let's work together. Let's make this program as good as we can. And it was really that mindset versus when am I going to be the head coach? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you did a lot of learning to get to that point.
I did. And still learning today, but everything that I do, I've learned from Coach Taylor on how to run a program right now. There's no question.
Great. So now let's get into the kids that you look for. What type of kids do you look for to come to Rider University to wrestle?
Well, wrestling is a very unique sport. I look for very independent kids. I need a lot of character, and I need them to be, and you can't see this, but you need to be mentally tough because wrestling is not an easy sport. It's a fun sport when you win, just like most sports are, but it's very brutal when you lose because you're the only one out there that can make or break the win or the loss. Right. So I watch the character for when they lose. I watch the character for when they win. I watch work ethic. I watch interaction with parents. Because especially if a kid loses, I want to see how he responds to when his dad chirps in his ear, because that's very common. If he screams at him or if he just accepts it and just kind of moves on. You know, there's a lot of cues that I'll look at. But in the middle of a match, I'll learn a lot about a young man. Athleticism, knowledge of the sport, like feel for the sport, anticipation of the sport, but also a mental toughness. There's always a point in a match between two close kids that will make or break the match. And I want to see how much he was willing to fight for the position to win the match. It tells me a lot about a kid. Now, you can still grow out of that, but it's just something that tells you about the kid a little bit at the moment.
So now the sports are at the same time for college and high school. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So how do you do your recruiting for high school, or is it outside the high school if they're doing some kind of club wrestling?
Well, they're doing club wrestling just like all sports, year-round now. But there's a lot of tournaments that are marquee tournaments that all the college coaches go to. There's a Beast of the East tournament down in Delaware, which is one of the largest tournaments in the United States. Teams from all over the country come, and it's beginning in December. So we make sure we don't have any competitions that day. It's, in the middle of our finals, so we go down there, we scout, recruit, things like that. We'll go, if we identify a kid, we'll go to one of his matches Wednesday, because you don't have to go far for talent in New Jersey and PA. Jersey's a very good wrestling state, one of the top 5 every year in the country. Pennsylvania, it arguably could be the best state in the country every year, but again, a top 5 state. So you don't have to go far to find quality kids to fill your room with. But it's their schedules, their tournaments. They draw your attention when there's success on the mat, and then we'll go to high school nationals. They'll go Flow Nationals, the state tournaments in New Jersey, the state tournaments in PA. And then it's just a lot of communication. Here with social media nowadays, it's just constant texting and Instagram, all that stuff.
So do you recruit all over the country, all over the world, or is it pretty much just in the? We'll
go over the country, but our roster is probably 80% New Jersey, and then the rest is mostly PA, then New York. We have had Delaware, we've got Maryland, we've got Ohio, some in there. So it's more than the Northeast type of area because it's very good wrestling.
Yeah. So now a student comes to Rider University. What do they expect when they get on the wrestling team? What's the year-round schedule for that student?
Well, it starts the day they move in,
which is August, September.
Usually our first day of classes is the first Wednesday after Labor Day every year.
So it's September.
September 5th. So we'll do that. They'll get themselves acclimated. We'll have a team meeting, and then it's just hit the ground running with physicals and workouts and training and classes and study hall and all that stuff. So they'll have a list of things that they're required to do, and it's time management is a big adjustment for a kid. So we kind of lay it out, we walk them through it, and then we kind of let them kind of find their way as they do that. But it's very structured, very regimented, because it has to be, because if you leave too much for interpretation, then it gets lost.
Yeah.
And then their priorities could shift. So we want to make sure their number 1 priority is school, their number 1A priority is wrestling, and everything else we don't care about.
Right.
Because it's a distraction to the first 2. So we really put our structure around their academic courses with study hall, with going to class, meeting with their tutors and things of that nature, and then practice fills in those gaps. Then there's not a whole lot of free time left for them after that.
Yeah. So now practice starts as soon as they get to school, and when does the season start?
Yep. So preseason practice starts that first week right there when classes start and goes till October 10th, which is our first official day via the NCAA. Then we can get into the room on a everyday basis, and our hours go from 8 to 20 at that point. So we can get more out of them at that point. So that's why it's important the first month to 5 weeks to get them in their academic schedules and understanding what their responsibilities are.
Okay, and how many matches are there? What's the season like when they get into the
Well,
season?
our competition season doesn't start till about mid-November, and then we run till the end of March. So it's a long season. It mirrors basketball a lot is what it does. And then their season is 16 dates were allowed. Now I can make it a tournament where they could wrestle 5 to 7 times a day, or I can make it a dual meet where it's once and done, and then we move to the next competition. So we usually have, in a 16-date schedule, we'll have 3 big tournaments, and then we'll usually have 15 to 20 dual meets in those where I do tries or quads or head-to-head duels. So it's managing their weight now. It's lifting weights extra. It's going to the training room because they're sore, they're tired, they're beat up. So now it's and going to practice and going to class, and getting ready to win that competition. So it starts to kind of rise as far as like intensity.
So now you get until March. Is that when the NCAA tournament starts, or is that the end of the season?
That's the NCAA. Well, our conference tournament is always the first weekend in March, and then the NCAA is always the third weekend in March.
Gotcha.
So everything is geared towards that. Those 3 days is what you're gauged on as an athlete and a coach and a program in our sport.
So now what happens April, May, June, July, and August?
Recruit.
Well, I mean for the students, what happens for the students? Do they go and do other things? Do they have a schedule of what they should be doing?
Well, they'll continue with their academic schedule because now it's a second semester, okay? But then we switch to our weightlifting program, so we'll do a 4 to 5 week cycle through the end of classes. And then we'll also shift to freestyle training, which is a different style of wrestling, which they do in the Olympics. And then there's University Nationals we can wrestle in. There's Northeast Regionals, which is all just freestyle. But it's a twist of almost like a trick to them because to us it's still wrestling and they're getting better. But to them it's something different within the sport. So it doesn't seem like work. It's actually fun again, because it can get real long and drawn out in the season. So it's nice to do freestyle wrestling. We lift, and then they focus on their grades. And then come the end of April, we're done classes, so it goes really fast.
Yeah. So that beginning of that summer, those summer months, do you give them some kind of schedule of eating habits, training? Do they do anything?
We actually let them eat normal in the summer because it's kind of like a rite of passage, so to speak. Yeah. But we do give them a weight program that covers the whole summer. We expect them up for our camps and for other opportunities that we have. We'll bring them back for training opportunities, on a volunteer basis. And then they'll come up. What we want them to go home too and spend time with their families because that's as important as anything. Go home, get out of here, get reset, get recharged, come back and get ready to go when we get it.
So now wrestling has different size limits, right? Weight size?
Yes, weight classes.
Weight classes.
Yep.
How do they get to those classes? Is it still like the old days where you're wearing wetsuits and trying to...
No, fortunately it's not because we've all worn those as older guys have worn those and they were awful. They would just wear you down and it's not healthy, obviously. There's a weight descent plan that each kid has to do. So we do it in the very first week of school where they have to do a body fat analysis and a urinalysis so that they can determine a safe 2%. No, it's 3% of your body weight per week you're allowed to lose. So it's not a lot. It's in like 3 pounds for most kids. Maybe the heavier kids is like 4.
Okay.
So that's why we do it early so that they could gradually get down in a healthy manner by eating their way down with smaller meals, more frequent, lots of water, and then the last day is maybe 2 pounds down and back up.
And now, how many students are in a weight class? How many do you keep in each weight class? Just one, or?
No, at our place we try to have 2 deep per weight, and then maybe a third amongst the other weights. So we're probably on our roster size, we're probably in the 27 to 30 range annually. But there's some weights that I only have 2. There's some weights I may only have 1, and I may have 3 or 4 in another. But I can move that kid up or move them around. So 2 is optimal 3 in addition is good, but it's hard to get more depth after that.
So now, how does it all work playing against other schools? Rider University is a Division I program, correct?
Yes.
So they play schools like what? Penn State?
We've wrestled Penn State before. Last year, in my first year as the head coach, I kind of had to have my head checked. We wrestled Iowa, Iowa State, Missouri, Minnesota, and Maryland, all in dual meets.
Wow.
Yeah, so we take on because we're in Division I, and there's only 78 Division I wrestling schools. So it doesn't matter what your size is, you got to go wrestle those guys. And to be an All-American, you have to beat those guys from those schools anyway. So you might as well get used to wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, win or lose, you might as well figure out where you're at with them. So we'll have, agreements where, like, last year Minnesota came to us. Next year we're going to Minnesota. We went to Iowa State last year. They're coming to us this year. And Princeton does the same thing. It's just figuring out your schedule. But being in the East Coast, it's nice because Princeton, Rutgers, Lehigh, Drexel, they're all within our very close driving, and they're all very good at wrestling.
Yeah, great. So now, recruiting-wise, what type of kids, grade-wise, are you looking for?
Well, you always want the best student because that helps us package them financially a lot better. So the more academic merit-based aid that they get, the better it is that I can give them wrestling, and then they get a win-win situation because their package just basically doubled, but I'm only held accountable for wrestling, and they get their academic money on top of it.
Gotcha.
So we're an expensive school because we're private, but we can make it manage, and the better student helps us get the better wrestler.
So does wrestling have scholarships?
Yes.
How many scholarships do they have every year?
The maximum is 9.9 in wrestling, and Rider, we're fortunate enough that they fully fund us, in the program. So we're very fortunate for that.
Right. So basically, every kid could get a full scholarship, would you say, per year?
You can, but we're an equivalency sport, so we're different than football, which is a head count sport, or basketball is a head count sport. So we take that 9.9, and I'll slice it up among 17 or 18 kids. So depending upon their grades, their academic, or their financial aid, and their wrestling, then I can give a 20% here. I can give an 80% there, So, but at the end of the day, with all the countable academic and wrestling aid, I have to be at 9.9.
Yeah. So you have to be a math major as well.
A little bit. But once you know the system, it's pretty easy. It's
Yeah.
and you got good people in our athletic department that know how to keep us straight, for sure.
Great. So now, going to the different tournaments and things, I always hear parents say, well, I should go to the camps at the schools because at least the coach gets to see them. What's your advice on those particular camps at the college level? Do you want kids that just want to come to Rider, or do you want a wide variety of kids coming
both.
here?
You want both because you want exposure to as many people, just like they want to expose themselves to you and get your eye on them. You want to get your eyes on the rest of the crew too. So you want to kind of get as many people, but for them, it's very important to get in front of the schools that you're interested in because you want to draw their attention, and then they can evaluate you a little bit more because it's in front of them. It's a less stressful environment. It's not a tournament. It's not a match. It's a little bit more laid back, and you can really figure out a little bit more about a kid. So the more camps that they can get to, and of the schools that they're interested in, you absolutely recommend it.
So now, a Division I school compared to Division II, Division III for wrestling, what's the difference between the three levels?
I would say school commitment financially between 1 and 2. I think that's the difference. And then 3 is just basically there's no scholarships. So that's where they kind of get left behind a little bit, but they package a little differently academically and financial aid wise. But I would say Division I and Division II is just a commitment financially from the athletic department or the institution themselves.
Yes. So basically, you're helping them more at the Division I level.
Yes.
So now, a lot of parents always talk about it's all about the sport, not about the academics. What does Rider do to help those kids academically?
Well, to steal a phrase from our athletic director, Don Harnum, he says we do Division I athletics right because we emphasize academics, period. Because we're not a Big Ten school. We're not a school of 50,000 students, and a very limited kids of ours are going to go on beyond their college career to continue competing in their sport. It's just a reality. It's not a mean or degrading or anything.
Correct.
It's just a fact. So it's really important that we emphasize that education, and that if we get somebody that doesn't, we're going to try to kind of turn your mentality around and make sure you're going to school, because even when we sit with our parents in the recruiting process, I say it's kind of my responsibility to you that I'll do everything in my power to help your son graduate. Make sure he's going to class, make sure he's getting the grades, make sure he's, doing his responsibilities, because that's everything. Because I can't guarantee you that you're going to be an All-American. I can't guarantee you're going to be a national qualifier. I can't guarantee you're going to be injury-free. So you got to make sure you go to class and do your work. So that much I can guarantee. If you do that, you'll probably graduate. So it's a little bit easier of a sell that way.
Yeah. So sitting down in someone's home, what basically are the discussions that really come up the most?
Academics always start with them first. We just met with Frankie Gissendaner, who just committed to us about 2-3 weeks ago. He's ranked number 2 in the country at 145 pounds out of New York. He's a 4-time New York State champ. So that was a big home visit for us out of Rochester. So it was about 6 hours away. And it's about making them feel comfortable with you as coaches, because they're trusting you with their son or daughter or whatever the sport may be. But they're trusting you that you're going to make sure that they're taken care of, that they go to class, that they're treated like they're their son and a parent. You know what I mean? So I got to become an extension of their family, which that's what we sell it on. It's part of a family. So we always say if they're not doing their part, we will put our foot where it belongs. We will also make sure we put our pat them on the back when they're doing the right things. But it's being a small school like Rider, we can do those sort of things without invading their privacy, but at the same time making sure they're going down the right path. So those home visits are very important, because there's the human element gets brought into it, and you get them to buy in on what you're talking about.
What's the amount of class size that these kids are seeing at Rider University?
Our class average is 12-to-1 student-teacher ratio. Now there's obviously much larger, much smaller, but our largest class sizes as a freshman will be between 30 and 35 kids.
Wow. So
some of the kids that go to high schools go to bigger high schools than what we have.
Yeah. So now, do you see any kids that actually have the aspiration of going to the Olympics after college?
We do get those kids. We usually get them, like the young man that we just signed. He is a cadet national champion, which is freestyle. So he has those aspirations of training at the regional training center, going out to the Colorado Springs with the Olympic Training Center, and doing that beyond his college career, and even during when he's there. So yeah, we get a lot of those kids.
And do you do any type of training for those type of kids?
It's nothing different than so they got to go through the college year as normal. And then unless they're redshirting, then they still do some of that, on their own. But then we get them to tournaments like the University Nationals, or the U23s, which they're called now, or the senior level nationals out in Las Vegas, and then the UWW junior trials. So there's plenty of opportunities that we can get them ready for. Once the season in college ends, we can get them training for that freestyle season. Gotcha.
And they could do that as well in the summer months.
Correct.
Right.
They're all in the summer months. They don't overlap freestyle and college wrestling at all.
Oh.
The freestyle is either before it or after it, and they let the college season alone.
Oh, great.
Because a lot of our best young freestylers are in college, so it would be a conflict of interest, and they're on scholarship, so they have to abide by the NCAA rules.
Good. So we're coming to the end of our show. Usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there and their sons that want to go on or wrestle at the college level? What advice do you want to give them?
Just keep doing what you're doing, but it's understand that the next level is what you're shooting for. It's not, the end-all be-all in high school right now. If your kid doesn't win a state title or they're not ranked number 1 in the country, it's probably going to be okay. There's plenty of opportunities out there, but just develop their character, make sure they have a work ethic, okay, and make sure that when they go to school, they're willing to roll their sleeves up, because a lot of kids will come from success and aren't willing to redefine themselves and roll their sleeves up, and those kids always fall by the wayside. You can't ride your coattails forever, so you have to kind of keep building and growing, and that's kind of what we look for when we're at Rider. But that's my advice, is just look to the next level, prepare yourself for the next level, because you have no idea what's out there, and do the best you can in the moment to be ready for the next level.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.